Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Paul.
Welcome to our first coffee concert of the year. As I'm sure you're aware, Shaw 2020 is on hold at the moment, but the coffee concerts go on as planned. So welcome to our first coffee concert. They're going to be a little bit different, and we will take each one as they come, and of course follow the rules of social distancing and make everything safe for everyone involved. So this first coffee concert is taking place in Jay Turvey's and my home in what we call the music room because there's a keyboard in this room. So welcome. I'll make my keyboard sound as good as possible. It's not a beautiful, grand acoustic piano, but I will do my very best. And we may get some cars or trucks driving by. We may get some lawnmowers, some leaf blowers, but let's hope for the best. Today's program starts with me playing some Schubert and some Joplin. I should give full names, Franz Schubert and Scott Joplin. And then we will feature a piece that I've written for Zoom. And I'll talk a little bit more about Zoom later. But Zoom is a platform that you can meet on online. And we've actually been rehearsing on Zoom the last 8 weeks or so at the Shaw Festival. And it poses certain challenges, especially for music making, but I decided to write a piece specifically for Zoom and for some of the members of our Shaw Orchestra. And then finally on the program, we're going to feature a song by the pop group Fountains of Wayne. Before we dive into music making, I would like to not only thank all of the musicians that performed today, but I would like to thank our creative project lead, Jason Cadieux, and Ethan Rising, head of sound at Shaw, and Corey McFadgen, who is our sound technician on the coffee concerts. Thank you to all of them for all of their help. So, the Schubert that you're going to hear today. When we all started self-isolating, I found myself with a little bit more free time on my hands. I'm sure that's something we all experienced. And it gave me more time to play the piano. And I thought, what is it I feel like playing? So I went down to my classical music and looked through and thought, what is it that I think I want to dive into right now? And for some reason, I went to Franz Schubert. And I reached for his piano sonatas. And I decided to start with his last great piano sonata in B-flat major. And it felt really good to be playing Schubert. There's something about his textures, his transparency, his melodies, the effortlessness of his writing, the harmonies and the harmonic progressions, the unexpected modulations, how he goes away and finds his way back. It's fantastic stuff. So I was really enjoying myself playing Schubert. And I also started thinking about the fact that Schubert wrote a lot of very short pieces, most of them dances, and noticed as I started looking through that music as well that he wrote that music throughout his life. So after I finished the last Schubert sonata, I thought, I'm just going to work my way backwards through all of these fantastic pieces of music, but I decided to start playing some of the shorter pieces as well. They're absolutely beautiful. So what you're going to hear today are 8 écossaises. Now, écossais in French means Scottish. So you would think you're going to get some sort of Scottish folk dance. But in fact, it is not related to Scottish folk dance. The écossais are dances that originated in France and in England. So who knows how they ended up with the name they did, but that's just sort of the way it goes. Each of these écossaises is 32 bars long. So they're quite short. You basically get an 8-bar phrase, which is repeated, and then another 8-bar phrase, which is repeated. And there are 8 of them. And I propose and this is, I think, the genius of Schubert and the genius of composers who are geniuses. There's something more than the sum of these parts, and these parts being 8 short dances. When they are strung together as they are very simple and very beautiful, but I think something else happens. I think they take you on a certain kind of journey. And so I encourage you, as you listen to these pieces, to allow yourself to go wherever they take you. And it's amazing to me that Schubert is able to achieve this kind of taking you on a journey with such short pieces. But there you go. That's the genius of Schubert. A couple notable things for me. The 5th dance starts in a major key and finishes minor. And the final piece starts minor. In fact, it's the most severe start of all the dances, but goes major. And I love to read into that Schubert considers the darkness just past the midway point of these dances, but in the end actually chooses the light. And I would suggest that you not count the dances. In a way, I wish I hadn't told you there were 8, or that 5 goes from major to minor and the last one goes minor to major, because I think you will stand a better chance of a great journey if you just let them wash over you, as opposed to having a checklist. There's number 1, check. Number 2, check. Just experience them. And I did want to note that these pieces are Deutsche 977. Deutsche is simply a word that we use to mark early, middle, and late Schubert, the way you would use opus for most composers or Kirschel number for Mozart. So that's a relatively late Deutsche number. And what kind of blows my mind is that even towards the end of his life, when he was writing the most magnificent pieces, including these sonatas that I've been playing through, he was still writing these beautiful little short pieces. Without further ado, I will present for you Schubert 8 Écossaises, Deutsche 977. The next piece I'm going to play for you is by Scott Joplin, and it's called Solace. I encourage you to do a little research on Scott Joplin because it's a fascinating life and there's far too much for me to go into right now. But just a few things. It's notable, I think, that Scott Joplin was born 5 years after slavery ended in the USA. He was born to a freeborn mother and a father who had been an enslaved person. He grew up in a very musical home. And ragtime was something that was just starting to emerge as a new form at this time. And it was a form born in the saloons and the bordellos of the United States. And Scott Joplin was right there for all of that. He was one of its leading proponents. So he took to piano at a very early age and showed great promise. And so by the time he was in his teens, he was playing in these saloons and bordellos. What would happen in the bordellos is they wanted a pianist playing, and they would call the pianists professors. And so the madam running the bordello, once she had company, she would get in touch with a pianist like Scott Joplin and say, the company has arrived and we would love to have the professor here. And so he would go and he would play in these clubs. And he encountered many, many other musicians who were playing in these clubs and these bordellos and diving into ragtime and writing and experimenting and everyone listening to each other's ideas and growing up this new form, ragtime. And what I think is really interesting about ragtime is it's one of the first forms, if not the first form, of music from the New World to then travel to the Old World. So until this point, Europe considered itself the center of musical activity, and the New World was basically the provinces, the backwater, whatever you want to call it. Everything that happened in the New World is what happened in Europe maybe 10 years later or something. But what started happening at the end of the 19th century is there were forms that were growing up in North America that were distinct from anything that was happening in Europe. And those forms traveled across the Atlantic and started getting composers there very excited. So for instance, Debussy and Stravinsky both wrote ragtime. And even Brahms was planning a ragtime project towards the end of his life, which I just find mind-blowing. Anyway, Joplin took the form sort of to its perfection. He's the leading composer of ragtime. Now, the piece I'm going to play today, Solace, it's not strictly ragtime, though it's influenced by ragtime. The piece has a subtitle, A Mexican Serenade. Now, the piece is about as Mexican as Écossais is Scottish, but it is influenced by Cuban music, and a particular Cuban music, which is the habanera. So the habanera, which originated in Cuba, already had African influences in it, and that music also then excited composers in Europe. So by the time we get to Bizet's Carmen, we get a habanera. And the main thing about the habanera is the characteristic rhythm, which is in the Joplin, we get it like this. Or later in the piece, we get it like this. But it's a characteristic rhythm through most of the piece, and it really generates the movement forward in the piece. Scott Joplin had a wonderful piano teacher early in his life. When he was growing up, he lived in a town where there was a German immigrant who taught piano, and this teacher was so impressed with Joplin that he gave him lessons for free and taught him classical music. So what I find so interesting about Joplin is he had one foot in this experiential world of playing in the bordellos and the saloons and being right there at ground zero as this new art form was sort of erupting. And then he had another foot in the world of classical music, and he learned about form and structure. And he was able to bring the two together beautifully. I think a couple things that are really important about Joplin, or one of the main things that's quite important, is he was very keen on getting his music published. And who knows if his music would have survived today if he hadn't been so intent on getting his music published. It was the Maple Leaf Rag that really put him on the map, and that was a huge hit. And of course, this is all before recorded music, right? So people had to create music in their homes. Sheet music was incredibly popular. Lots of people knew how to play instruments, knew how to play the piano, and they would go and buy sheet music and come to their homes, learn how to play these pieces. It brought them enjoyment. It was a pastime. It was a social thing. And so Joplin was very, very smart to focus so much early on getting his music published. And what I find interesting in his music is he wanted people to play it exactly as written. And so for me, that's sort of that combination of the pianist in those saloons and bordellos, like right there with ragtime being born, and someone who has some classical training and understands the importance of publishing, and understands or has decided that he'd like his music played exactly as written, in the same way that Schubert would want his music played exactly as written. So I think it's a really gorgeous piece of music that Scott Joplin wrote, Solace, a Mexican Serenade, and I am going to play it for you now. So welcome to the Zoom room, everyone. This is my group of players for the piece that I wrote. The piece is called Zoom, and I treat Zoom as an acronym for Zoo of Online Musicians, because look at all of us in our little cages here. So this is the platform I was talking about earlier, and it's the platform that we rehearsed on at Shaw for about 8 weeks. And Zoom has some interesting properties and isn't always the most friendly for music. And well, one of the things I should mention that we started doing when we began Zoom rehearsals is a kind of Zoom etiquette, which is you always raise your hand when you want to speak, because if we all start speaking at the same time, we cancel each other out. So that's one of the properties of Zoom that I wanted to exploit in this piece. Rather than look at the limitations of Zoom as limitations, I wanted to look at them as opportunities. So, as I said just now, if we all started speaking at the same time, only one voice would come through at any given moment. So we learn the etiquette of raising our hand to speak. So I'm inviting the musicians, if you want to add anything to what I'm saying, just up goes your hand and you're welcome to speak. The other issue with Zoom that we're looking at as an opportunity is what we call latency, or a delay. So even though you feel like you're hearing me in real time, you aren't. You're actually hearing me a little bit later. And you're not all hearing it uniformly later. It has to do with many issues, connectivity being one of them. But the biggest challenge is like, how good or bad is your internet? So you may have really good internet and only be like a half a second behind. If your internet's really bad, it might be 2 seconds behind. So we all experience latency or delay, but in various ways. We learned that the hard way during a lot of rehearsals for Gypsy and Assassins online, but we always worked our way around it. So I wanted to write a piece that kind of dealt with those things head on. And well, before we go on, I want to show you the latency thing. Maybe some of you have seen this online, but we'll recreate it for you. We're all going to clap together. Okay, all the musicians, we're going to clap together. Here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. So you see the issues of latency. We can't all be together. So I set out to write a piece that in the first part has all the musicians playing solo lines, and they pass the lines off from one instrument to the next with a real sense of breath between phrases, because again, because of the latency, we can't keep a steady tempo. Then we get into the middle section of the piece, and that's where I start conducting. And everyone, well, it starts with guitar, then the piano joins, then most of the other instruments join, with the soprano, saxophone, and violin joining in last. And they're all playing at the same time. I'm conducting to keep us all together as best I can. So it's really quite the experience, because when I start conducting, I expect guitar. And in fact, here's what happens. Guitar. So I start counting like mad to make sure that I'm maintaining a tempo. Now, for Jason on the guitar, he feels like he's absolutely with me. And as all the instruments come in, they feel like they're with me, but they're all not with me to varying degrees. And that's the fun of this section. I thought, let's introduce a kind of John Cage element to the piece, where Zoom actually determines a couple of things. On the one hand, it approaches what some of the minimalist composers did, which is play around with phase shifting, where something that's supposed to be synchronized slowly gets out of sync until a new pattern emerges. That's definitely happening in the second section. And the other thing that's happening is there's an element of chance, which was something that John Cage was extremely interested in. And so with each performance of this piece on Zoom, that middle section would be different, because Zoom is determining who comes through and who doesn't come through. So I think what you'll hear in that middle section is a kind of kaleidoscope of instruments. They're all playing, but you're only going to get some of them at any given moment. And I leave it to you. I I could talk on and on about why I wrote the piece I wrote, but I'm actually more interested in you, the listener, taking from it whatever it is that you'd like to take from it. Well, I've babbled on, but Ryan's got his hand up. Yes.
Like I said, for us who were rehearsing in Gypsy, we all rehearsed on mute. So even now you see that all the musicians are in mute. This was the first time in 8 weeks that we've actually played a song where we were actually listening for something to happen and we were reacting to it, which to me struck me as quite lovely, to be able to participate with another musician where I could actually hear them. All of our band rehearsals and everything was conducted with us being in mute. So you would see somebody go to play, but you would hear nothing. So for me to be able to sit there and go, I'm going to play after Eric on the violin, and I didn't have to watch her. I could just listen for the instrument, and then I would play my instrument, and someone else would follow. As musicians, that's what we do. We sort of listen and react. And then when we go to the middle section, we just ignore Paul completely. You see him set the time, and then our job is to like stop looking, because if you look, you're going to be completely confused, and just count. And you hear these other musicians. It's as close as we've come to playing in a pit. Hopefully, it doesn't happen for very long. But it was a great experience to actually play with other musicians for the first time in a very long time.
Anyone else? Jason. And I wanted to mention, these are all members of the Shaw Festival Orchestra, except we have a guest artist, Jason Chesworth, who is on crew at the Festival Theatre. But he's a wonderful guitarist, and I'm so happy he could join us. Jason.
Well, thank you for the invite. Just to that point, I want to say what I think it would be something would make any musician sweat bullets being invited to come and rehearse with the Shaw Festival Orchestra. That's a first for me. No less, it was done on Zoom, so it was pretty wild. But I wanted to comment on one aspect that I didn't anticipate coming, because we're so focused. We do this in 60 minutes, and we're all looking at our music. But today, when we were working, I actually heard somebody breathe, and it allowed me that moment of picking up that cue that we pick up when we're playing together, what Ryan was saying. Now, I haven't experienced that as part of the Gypsy Orchestra, but just it reminded me of how isolated we've been, and just to hear another musician breathing in your ears was a fantastic moment. So for that alone, thank you so much.
That's great, Jason. And again, that was something that I had to take into account when writing this, because we can't experience measured time as a unified community in this kind of situation. So there really needed to be a sense of a musician has a phrase and finishes, and there's breath before the next phrase kind of thing. So I'm glad that the breath that happened in there worked for you and supported you. And let's have no lawnmowers, hopefully, or leaf blowers, right? So here we go. Let's get ready for our recording of the piece, Zoom. I will ask you all to mute now so that you can take an A and tune up for our performance. Okay, here we go. Zoom. Really well done, everyone. That was great. So for our last piece on the program today, we're featuring a song from the group Fountains of Wayne. They are a favorite pop group of mine. They write very inventive, very catchy songs, very clever songs. A lot of them are incredible story songs, which is why I think as a theater artist, I'm so attracted to their music. And we have a guest artist, Jay Turvey, here today to sing the song. Jay.
Yeah, I just want to say a few words about Adam Schlesinger, who is one of the members of Fountains of Wayne. And yes, I would kill to have written any number of songs that they wrote. He had a career in pop music, but he also had a career in movies and in theater. And he wrote Cry Baby, which is on Broadway, and Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, the songs for that on TV. And he's responsible for co-writing some of the songs that you hear on the Tony Awards, those really incredibly witty intros and outros. Adam Schlesinger passed away earlier this year from complications from COVID-19, and so we want to pay tribute to him by singing one of our favorite songs of his, which is about football and time and those rare perfect moments. It's called All Kinds of Time. The clock's running down, the team's losing ground to the opposing defense. The young quarterback waits for the snap when suddenly it all starts to make sense. He's got all kinds of time. He's got all kinds of time. All kinds of time. He's got all kinds of time. All kinds of time. He takes a step back. He's under attack, but he knows that no one can touch him now. He seems so at ease. A strange inner peace is all that he's feeling somehow. He's got all kinds of time. He's got all kinds of time. All kinds of time. He's got all kinds of time. All kinds of time. He thinks of his mother. He thinks of his bride to be. He thinks of his father, his two younger brothers, gathered around the widescreen TV. He looks to the left, he looks to the right, and there in a golden ray of light is his open man, just like he planned. The whole world is his tonight. He's got all kinds of time, he's got all kinds of time, all kinds of time. He's got all kinds of time, all kinds of time.
James Daly, everyone.
Hello out there.
Hey, James. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be in the backyard and
Safely on the other side of the screen,
Yes,
or,
yes.
right? Social distancing.
you guys look like a beautiful silhouette right now.
We're so happy you could join us. You all probably know, but James is a member of the Shaw Acting Ensemble and a wonderful singer and guitarist, and we're glad he could make this surprise appearance. And thank you to Jay for singing the song, and thank you all for coming to our first coffee concert of the year. It's been different, but it's been great, and I hope you've enjoyed yourself, and I hope you come back for our other concerts this year. Thanks, everyone. Bye, and take care.